second doctor understood that there was no way he was not going to stop these young people who was made up of women that were willing to die because they hurt. Now, he never quit for anything. And with Dr. Bartlett, he thought it was simply Jack would wait for one, they'd stop. They could have said, if Sullivan had police officers all over that parking lot, or even a few, you know, they were all over John and Jim's word, and Floyd Mann fired his pistol and said, "You one more time." And yeah, I think they could have said, I think they could have said, you know, and I think when they got to Mississippi, it was clear by the time they got to Mississippi. Who was later a congressman, something in the National Guard. And I think they come across state lines and they stop. And that, of course, is a week later.
4 days.
4 days.
Either Alabama.
Yeah, that's right. And Montgomery was, yeah, Sonny was on the Mississippi side. And, you know, they stopped him and they take him, put him in jail, and then put him in Park, which was the hell of all American prisons. You had your hand up.
I've been, ever since I've read the story about you and Diane Nash and, you know, the conversation the two of you had, the one question that's been on my mind is, it always seemed to me like Kennedy was like this visionary. He was a very progressive visionary in what he wanted to see this
He
whole-
was.
Well, if that was the case, well, how exactly did he see the civil rights thing playing out, if not by these people having to constantly put themselves in danger? You wanted to protect them because you saw what could happen to them, but did you guys see any other way for black people to get the rights that they wanted to, if not by putting themselves in constant danger?
No, I think in the Attorney General's mind and in the President's mind, they had worked this scenario out so that this whole voting rights scenario out. I mean, what they really wanted was for the movement to go away. And they never expressed it, I'm sure, and they knew that it wouldn't. But if you really looked at what they were hoping for, they hoped that they would get through 4 years, or almost 4 years, and not have an explosion, not have to send troops or marshals in. And unrealistic the first time in Montgomery, and then Oxford, they had to send federal troops. But again, that strategy of marshals first, you know, they were shooting marshals down on the campus at Ole Miss, or shooting at them on the campus at Ole Miss. The memorabilia that that pipe up there was part of had in it some marshals' helmets that had been pierced, one or two, and, or there had been imprints made on them. And so, but there's absolutely no doubt that the President and the Attorney General were hoping against hope they could just get through this, and that the movement would focus on voting rights. And as he said to Dr. King, you know, if you can get, I can win these cases, and we can require, require that voter registration takes place. And then he said, people like Jim Eastland won't be so fresh. I think that's close to a quote. I think people like Jim Eastland won't be so fresh.
Now, you know, you got to think for a moment, Martin's sitting on the other side of this desk, and he knows who this is. This is the campaign director for the president who just got elected 3 months before. And, you know, he's got to be saying, yes, he's right, but this is more than voting rights, you know. It's poverty, it's housing, it's education, it's jobs. And I've got to go where I I see it. Yeah.
I have a question from the interview with when Diane Nash gave you a lesson. What, personally, what was that like? I mean, here you are, and you've said it. You just want to come in, get.
Well, it was like, I was
I mean,
frustrated.
for you,
It was frustrating.
I mean, here's
you know,
this young
you
girl.
Just, you know, you forgive an old man for saying he was pissed off. You know, I mean, Diane was so calm, so cool, so laid back, and they dealt with her. I mean, and I heard Bernard once say she was so beautiful we were all in love with her, and well, I wasn't in love with her. I was trying to get her to call them back. All right. First of all, I didn't know they had gone, and then she told me, well, they're on their way as Tuesday. They're not coming back. And then when I got, and you know, you've heard me say, my voice went up and up and up, and you know, I mean, she handled it. She handled it with all the maturity, and I would have to say she was respectful. Well, she handled it with all the maturity in the world. And again, you know, you ask I've asked where their courage came from. Where did that maturity come from on her part? Let me tell you, I mean, that's natural. You know, that's as natural as grace. I mean, it just was part of, I guess that's why she was a leader. Really?
This question only requires a yes or no.
That's not a Southern question.
I'm going to find a way to go beyond that, really. No, go ahead.
I know that you have sat with Sue Wilbur 2 times that I've been there with you.
Yeah.
Has there ever been any conversation between the 2 of you about that day?
Yeah, upstairs in my office one day, when she and her husband came here, and we did that program together, she came in the next day, and we talked about it. And again, I didn't know until she came in and told me that the night that Bull kidnapped the Freedom Riders and took them up the Tennessee line, I didn't know that it was Susan Wilbur's mother's station wagon that came down. Now, it may be in the book and I missed it, but she was telling me upstairs, and I asked her, how did that happen? And she doesn't know. Or maybe you know how it happened.
Well, it was interesting, you know, when I first interviewed Kwame, he remembered as being a Studebaker, which had already burned up. And he had forgotten that he had borrowed the station wagon,
yeah.
And couldn't quite recall how all this happened. That's
right.
How he got the car big enough to get them.
But I thought that was.
Well, no, it's possible because she and her sister were part of the sit-in.
Yeah.
And it's possible that we may have had a phone number or something.
I don't know. I know both of them were Tennesseans. I talked to her about her mother, and she obviously was a wonderful woman. She had those. They were in a majority white school. I mean, there were almost no blacks in Peabody College for teachers at that time, believe it or not. And I think it was almost a lily white school. Might have been 3 or 4 students studying to be college professors, but she said she didn't really know how it came about, except that she did know that the car was hers, or the family's, and that her mother had given it up. And I said, "Were you surprised?" And she said, "No, I wasn't. My mother knew what we were doing." But you know, it must have scared that poor woman out of her wits to have her daughter put away like that. Yeah.
With all of your accomplishments, Jake, and knowing you still have miles to go,
Mm.
where does this rank in all of that?
Where does
Your involvement, contribution?
I'm a different human being because of it. I mean, I'm just a different human being. You know, and I think my parents sort of helped me through some of that. I mean, for all my life, I've been against capital punishment, and some of you may be for capital punishment, but they raised me to be. First time I saw my father weep was over that issue of the death penalty, and so I do think, though, that as a young reporter, I had been lucky on getting some stories that were exceptional. Just sheer luck. And as a result of it, my byline's been on a lot of stories, and it made some national news. And so one day I got a call. Now I'm at the paper 3-4 years, and it was a call from an African-American attorney, great civil rights lawyer named Avon Williams, later member of the state senate. And he said that there had been a case, Camden, Tennessee, which is West Tennessee by the Tennessee River, 6 months earlier, in which a black sawmill hand named Owen Travis had been murdered by a white cab driver named Stephen Owens. Over an $8 cab bill. That he had stabbed him to death, run over him, and he broke Owen Travis's neck. And I've gotten the cab driver's name wrong, but it'll come to me. At any rate, that was on a Saturday night. He had thrown the knife in the river. It happened on the front lawn of the owner of the sawmill. He called the sheriff because the body was left in the front yard. They picked the fellow up. He had thrown the knife in the river. They let him go on his own recognizance, and on Monday morning, the grand jury, with his father-in-law, a member of the grand jury, returned a no-trial bill. And Senator Williams said, nothing's been done about this. And so the paper sent me down there, and I wrote some stories about it. A new district attorney indicted the cab driver, and they sent him to penitentiary. And so pretty early on, you know, that was.
You were seeing their humanity.
Yeah, you know, that sort of story really, that sort of event sort of makes you think. And there was a terrible reaction in that community. Nobody wanted to take the paper in Camden, small town. But that happened pretty early on in my life, so and it helped. It helped send me off where I was going. So looking back on it, I just been lucky throughout my life. You know, and in spite of the fact that I could have been badly hurt that day, I was lucky to be there. And I look back on it and consider myself very lucky to have been there, and I'm also lucky that all of you are here, and I thank you for coming.
Well,